Hey everyone, and welcome to the first anniversary of One Piece a Day. It's been exactly 1 year since I began this journey, and really it has gone in a way that I did not think it would. And we'll be getting into all of that, as well as the regular updates of One Piece a Day, things about where I am currently in the manga, what I think about the manga, updates of One Piece personally to me, and sort of just general catch up on what's been going on. So, first off, it's been a year since I've started reading the manga. I started this on a whim of wanting to catch up on the series by reading one chapter every day until I caught up. And that initially sounded a little bit silly, but generally it made quite a bit of sense in terms of how to get into a franchise without marathoning it and sort of losing the impact of that franchise. So it's like I could have easily sort of binge read One Piece, but in a lot of the slower arcs and things like that, I know I would have tuned out or tried to skip certain chapters and things like that, and I really wouldn't have given it the time that it deserved, because as it was coming out, this was predominantly a weekly series. And you have to put that in perspective. If people would wait every single week for a new chapter, and even in the slower arcs, that would have been quite painful, because I have a bit of trouble sort of doing it daily for like the weaker arcs. So I can only imagine what it was like going weekly and arcs that last, say, 50 plus chapters. That would have been a whole year of manga for people. And I just think that's fascinating of just putting it in perspective. I've been reading it one chapter a day, which in retrospect actually seems quite fast. Yes, it'll take a while for me to catch up. It'll take, another 2 and a bit years. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it's fine. And to my understanding, the way that it's going now, by the time I catch up to the series, it will still be going. Whether or not we will have entered like sort of finale territory, I'm not quite sure. We'll see how it goes. Yes, I know certain aspects of what's going on, like I know the rough idea of Wano, but I don't know the intricacies of it. A good example of sort of what's going on, spoilers, I know the results of the Water 7 Enies Lobby arc, in terms of, I know that they get Robin, but I don't know the steps to getting Robin. So a lot of what I've been reading in Water 7, which is where I am currently, or Water 7 Enies Lobby, which is where I am currently, is quite fresh, because I know the location, I know the major players, but I don't know the reasonings, I don't know the developments. Like, I know certain abilities get unlocked or showcased, but I don't know the steps involved to those, which is actually quite exciting, because while I know the general idea, so much is still unknown to me, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. Sometimes there are arcs that I've never even heard of, and I can see why I've never even heard of them. Like the Foxy Pirates arc, wasn't for me. And the Jaya arc, while it did play into a grander story, I still didn't really care for it that much. Little Garden, again, played into a grander story, still didn't really care for it. So I am glad that there is still an element of mystery and everything like that. Like I mentioned, where I am currently, Water 7 Enies Lobby. It's an interesting arc. There's a lot of characters and a lot of like big, prominent personalities in it, as well as quite a bit of mystery. There's a lot of development for the crew and main cast. Luffy is not necessarily coming into his own as a captain, but you're seeing more what sort of he understands a captain to be, and how he will put his foot down in certain situations, even if it tears him up, which is quite interesting, because this whole dynamic with him and Usopp was very, very interesting, and you can see it in how he sort of puts his foot down of like, no, Robin's innocent, or Robin's part of the crew. You can see he's very adamant about that, even though he was just adamant about kicking Usopp out, even though that tore him up. So that was quite interesting, seeing how this all plays out. I am much more into this sort of development for the characters in the arc and story and everything like that than I have been the last little bit, because Skypiea was okay, Foxy Pirates didn't care, Jaya didn't care. Alabasta was the last like really, really, really good arc, and it seems like we're coming into like a good grand story again, per island, which is what I like. So I think that we're at a really good point in the manga right now, and I'm really happy to see it developing again, and me being really, really interested and invested in every single chapter. So yeah, that's cool. So we'll go through the general things that I usually do, which is update of where I am, favorite character so far, favorite arc so far, favorite villain, things I don't like, overall thoughts on the experiment and the series, favorite fight, and general One Piece news personal to me, not necessarily like the franchise itself. So I've already done an update of where I am, so chapter 365, because it's been a full year since I started. I started on February 1st, 2022, and ideally I'll be finished, I think it's like or I'll catch up like around April, May-ish, 2026? 25? It's 25 or 26. My math's not the best right now. I did just wake up. Favorite character so far, it sort of bounces around quite a bit, but it pretty much always rests on Zoro or Luffy. I do really like Zoro, even if he has like negative development, because nothing really goes on with him story-wise. I know that'll change, but it's just like what you see is what you get with him mainly, and he does play the sort of straight man really well as like the butt of the joke, and that works with how cool he is as a fighter, how serious he is as a character, and how dumb he is when it comes to directions. So they always play it off quite well. He's a pretty multi-layered character, but none of the like foils of the character ruin him, which is quite hard to do. So I like Zoro. Every action scene he's in is good. He's good in Skypiea. He was good in Alabasta. So far, he's pretty good in Water 7 as well, even though he just like wrecked an entire room of people, and he said, "Oh, it's okay. He just used the back of his sword," but he still hit them pretty damn hard with the sword. Yeah, Zoro's good. Luffy, I am glad that we're seeing more of him as like an actual character and an actual captain, instead of him just sort of having fun all the time or playing around all the time. He can get serious, and serious Luffy is very intimidating, but we're seeing like serious Captain Luffy in this sort of arc, and so I really like he's developing there. Sanji, Nami, Chopper, not a lot going on. Frankie just got introduced, and he's actually a bit more interesting than I thought he would be. I thought he was just a bit more of a joke, but there is a bit more going on, which I like. Really, really interested to know what the level of technology is in One Piece, because it's like they just introduced Frankie and they're like, oh, he's a cyborg. And I'm like, I sort of like vaguely understood that we had like steam power like level in terms of like technology, but I didn't think we had like actual like cyborgs. So that's wild. I always sort of assumed that Frankie's abilities, from what I saw, were like fruit based or something like that, or he was like a super genius for his time. But yeah, the way they played off him being a cyborg like it was nothing leads me to believe that there's a lot more going on in terms of like where we're at in technology. So yeah, that's a thing. But back to favorite character, still probably Zoro. Not a lot to really talk about. Just over the whole year of manga, like it's between Zoro and Luffy, and I would say it's probably Zoro. He's had more standout moments to me, and I enjoy his character a lot more currently. So yeah, favorite arc so far, it's very easy. It's Alabasta. It was the highlight of the entire manga so far. Really well written, really well structured, really well paced. Fantastic villain, great overall narrative, tied into previous arcs, had serious weight to it, developed really well, ended really well, and had its fair share of really strong emotional moments. It's pretty much like the quintessential One Piece arc. Before that, it was Arlong Park, And I think between Arlong Park, elements of Drum Kingdom, and pretty much all of Alabasta, that's the best sort of what's it? Best sort of like cherry picked arcs for if you want to get into One Piece or not. I think that if those arcs click with you, then I think One Piece is definitely like the thing that you know you'll be in for. I think especially Arlong Park, because it's fairly early on, and it establishes itself quite well and has its fair share of emotional moments and well structured and well developed. So I think that if Arlong Park clicks with you, then One Piece is for you, and I think that's a really important test for the franchise. But besides that, favorite arc is still Alabasta. It's just so expertly structured and executed. It's just a fantastic run. So yeah, Alabasta still my favorite arc. Favorite villain is obviously Crocodile, because of course the favorite arc had the best villain as well, and the arc wouldn't have been the best arc without Crocodile. He's the one who really makes it the best. It's the way he uses his power, the way he plans everything out, because he is, I keep saying it in all these videos, he is a physically strong character that could overpower and could take down all these people, but he doesn't play it that way. He plays the long game, the intelligent game. He could beat everyone to a pulp if he wanted to, but he's doing it in a very intelligent, very conniving, very crazy way, and it makes him a much more interesting character and a much more intelligent character for One Piece, because a lot of the other ones are like NL or Enoru. A really good example is it's like, I'm bad because I'm bad. They really did not even bother explaining him. Arlong was just evil because they're like, oh, he's a pirate, and things like that. But Crocodile was like, he's actually doing these things in an intelligent way. He is evil sort of for the sake of being evil, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Hence his sort of want of the ancient tablets and things like that. Surely he has like more of a motivation than the others. Like, he did want to take down Alabasta and gain access to something for the Pluton. I think that's what he was after. So he did have an actual goal, and I'm sure there's a lot more motivation behind it. And I know Crocodile appears later on, so I'm sure we'll learn more about it then, or at least I hope we'll learn more about it then. Things I don't like about the franchise, I've touched on it a couple times in this video already. It's the slower arcs, the ones that I never heard of. It's the Jaya arc, it's the Foxy Pirates arc, Little Garden to an extent. It's when it, and Skypiea, kind of, it was average. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but it had good moments and it had bad moments. So the things that I don't like about the franchise is when the arc is inconsistent, or the arc feels unnecessary, or we're just stopping off for a breather. And I understand that Oda can't make like an absolute marathon arc after marathon arc after marathon arc. He needs a break. And that's what these lighter arcs and smaller islands are for. They're there for a break. They're basically the filler of One Piece. Sometimes they fill in a grander story, sometimes they don't. Like the Foxy Pirates felt useless up until right at the end when Aokiji appeared and sort of set the scene of like, things are bigger than they seem. Jaya set up Skypiea, Little Garden set up Alabasta. So there was a lot more going on in each of those arcs, but generally they were sort of fluff. And that's the main thing that I don't like about the franchise. It's just the general inconsistency of the arcs. And when it hits a low, it's a pretty, like, it's not bad, but it's just like a bit of a slog. And I think that's because the highs are so high that even an average seems quite low. And that's just because when it hits its peak, it's a very good peak. Favorite fight in the franchise? I think I said it was Luffy versus Crocodile, pretty much any of them. But in particular, like the second and third fights, with like Water Luffy and then the actual like finale. I really like Zoro against Mr. One. I think Mr. One, the one with the swords. Or that he can turn his whole body into a blade. That one. That was a really good fight. Really enjoyed that. Just thinking, I really liked Zoro and Skypiea when he fought and Wiper came in as well. That was a good fight. It's not my favorite, but I did like Usopp versus Luffy because Usopp is pretty massively outclassed by Luffy, and it feels like Luffy's not using his full power against Usopp. But it's really interesting because Usopp has got such a variety of skills, and he starts incorporating the dials from Skypiea into his combat style, and I really, really, really like that. It makes him seem like a much better character and sort of helps shrink the power gap because a lot of the crew members are way stronger than they should be, like Zoro and Sanji, and Luffy, of course. Especially in like the Foxy Pirates arc where Sanji and Zoro teamed up and just took down these absolute giants. And yeah, that just seemed wild. So yeah, that was cool. Still probably going to be Luffy versus Crocodile. But there have been some really good fights, like the Whiskey Peak Zoro taking down the entire island. That was a really good fight. Usually it involves Luffy or Zoro, pretty much, because they have really, really cool choreographed fights. Like Zoro is always like a bit more spectacle than you think it'll be, and it's really cool sort of like angles and styles, and it's a really cool mesh. Luffy, it's always very wild fights, and I quite like those. I think I'll do One Piece news. So since the last video to now, the One Piece card game has come out, and I've decided to partake a little bit in it. I'm sure the unboxing video is up by now, where I unbox one booster box of Romance Dawn, and yeah, I think it turned out okay. I don't know if I'm going to play the card game, but I am interested in collecting them just because I think they're nice display pieces to put in front of One Piece figures. Other things, I've gotten a few more figures, which may or may not be on the channel just yet. Hopefully there'll be B-roll running through this so you can see what's been happening a bit more, so that's really cool. I made a One Piece music box, which I didn't record the process of, but I will show it. It's quite cool. It plays We Are, which is, I think it's the first opening for One Piece, which is really cool. I'll make mention of this because ever since I started collecting One Piece figures, ever since getting into One Piece, because I'm super addictive, I've got a super addictive personality and it's really annoying. Ever since I started collecting the figures, I decided to collect POP, so Portrait of Pirates, and I wanted to collect the entire crew. And I didn't realize how stupid that was when I was going into it. So getting Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Nico, Robin, Chopper, even Brook and Usopp were decently easy because there's the Sailing Again line. There's multiple lines for Portrait of Pirates, and not a lot of them get finished, unfortunately. But the Sailing Again line is one of the few ones where they finished the entire crew. So the only two that I'm missing are Franky and Jinbei, and both of them stupidly priced. And I can see why. Not so much the Jinbei, it's just a really nice looking statue, but the Franky I can see why, because he's an all-in-one type figure. He can be displayed multiple ways, he's got a ton of accessories, and is basically a toy as well as a statue, and that's really, really cool. But yeah, it's annoying that I decided, I was like, oh, well, Portrait of Pirates, that looks cool, let's get them. I could have just done like Grand Line Men or Grand Line Women or something like that, and that would have been really, really easy to collect them. Because I just want to get a set all in scale with each other. As well as a few bits and bobs that are just cool in their own right. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've done. And so my two One Piece Grail figures, the Portrait of Pirates, Sailing Again, Franky and Jinbei. Maybe one day. I really hope they do re-releases. They're starting to do a little more Portrait of Pirates re-release, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Other One Piece news, One Piece Odyssey, the game, just came out recently. I haven't played it yet, but it looks really, really cool. I'm not sure if it's something that I should play straight away, because if it's got a really good focus on story, which originally I was like, oh, this is an original story, doesn't matter. To my understanding, you revisit the past with the current crew members, and it sort of reenacts certain moments from the anime and manga, and that may or may not be a good thing, because it might spoil the more nuanced moments that I haven't been spoiled on in One Piece. So I'm not 100% sure if I should play it, or play a little bit of it, shelve it until I catch up, which would also be stupid. So I'll make a decision when I have the game, because I will buy it. I'll make a decision when I have the game, if that's a good decision or not. We will see. But back to One Piece a Day. Overall thoughts on the experiment so far and the series as a whole. So because it's been a year, and I have touched on it already in this video, because it's been a year, I've read a good chunk of the manga and can pretty much make an opinion on what I think of One Piece. And yes, it's very good. It is a very, very good series. 4Kids did do me dirty early on. The experiment sounded a little annoying on paper. Again, I mentioned it earlier, where reading one chapter a day seemed a little bit odd, but it's better than binging it, and it did come out weekly in the past, and that would have been really annoying doing weekly. When I catch up, I will be doing weekly, so we'll see. Might be doing monthly update videos after that. But yeah, so I've read a year's worth of manga, which is, well, not a year's worth of manga, I've read one chapter a day for a year, which is, 365 chapters, so it's the equivalent of, like, what, 7 years? Wait. Yeah, so it's like 6 or 7 years of the manga. Yeah, I mean, the anime has been going for over 20 years. Sorry, I'm just having a moment there. Yeah, so I've read like the equivalent of like 6 or 7 years of the manga, which is wild to think about. I think I just had a weird realization just then. But yeah, look, it is fantastic. It has its ups and downs. It can't always be perfect. One of the things I really do like is seeing Oda's art style evolve over time. You can see what's stayed and what's left since the very early chapters. The style's refined, the goofiness and exaggeration has been like accelerated. The balance between serious and silly, wild and more toned down designs, it's really, really cool. You can see all the character designs and general style of the franchise is consistent across the board now. So that's really, really cool. It's nice to see it evolve. For the experiment in itself, I will keep doing it one piece a day, because there's no point otherwise. But it's not hard to continue one chapter a day. It's not really a problem at all, and part of that is due to how easy the Shonen Jump app is. This isn't a plug or anything like that, it's just how I've been reading it, and the app just keeps track of where I am, and it's really easy to browse through. When I click on One Piece, it auto scrolls down to the last chapter that I read, and it's consistent across devices, so if I pick it up on my phone or I pick it up on a tablet or a computer, it would still register where I was. So that's really cool. Yeah, easy to do. It's not a hassle reading it. I thought it would be a hassle, but I also didn't think that I would get into it as hard as I did. But it shows how sort of bad the 4Kids adaptation was, that I was so reluctant to get into it, as well as how daunting the franchise feels from the outside, where it's like over 1,000 chapters, over 1,000 episodes of the anime. That is difficult for a viewer to go, oh, I want to start watching this, or I want to get into this. That is very, very hard. Something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a lot easier to digest because it's separated into defined arcs. And One Piece, I don't know how easy it is to sort of pick it up after the time skip, because I know there is a time skip. I don't know how easy it is to pick it up after the time skip, but it's like something like Naruto. I felt it was quite easy to skip all of the core Naruto and just start reading Shippuden, similar to how you can skip all of Dragon Ball and watch Z. But I don't think you can watch Super. I think Super requires quite a bit of previous reading. But I think Shippuden's fine. I know Boruto, a lot of you people started watching on that, but that's not that good. But it's like Shippuden was fine, Z was fine. I don't think One Piece is fine post-time skip. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure that they do some backtracking and things like that. But I know Shippuden, it made sure to catch you up on everything that was important, and Z definitely tried to catch you up on everything that was important. So yeah, I don't know how One Piece is to sort of like the viewer that has never heard of the franchise and just sees the episode count or the chapter count and is like, whoa. So yeah, that can be daunting. And even as someone who understood the franchise and started reading a bit of it and watching a bit of it years ago, it seemed like it was daunting then with like prior knowledge. But it might have been more daunting then because I knew what the sort of challenge would entail. But yeah, I won't drone on that too much. But overall thoughts on everything else, yeah, I will keep it up. It's definitely engaged me. I'm keen to see where it goes, and it's one of those things where I think I know it'll stick the landing when it actually does finish, but I don't know how it'll stick the landing. Because and I say that I know it'll stick the landing, it's because it can't afford not to. Like, if this somehow screws up the ending, like, that's it. I don't know how it would recover from that. As well as like a thing of, oh, what would Oda do after One Piece? I don't think he'll do anything, really. I think this is it. Like, it's his one and only, and it's all he ever needs. He might do a little thing here or there as like one-shots, but I don't think he'll ever do like another big shonen. And I think a lot of that comes down to, one, he's explored all the ideas he probably has already, and two, because anything he makes after this will be like, oh, it's not as good as One Piece, or it'll be compared to One Piece endlessly, no matter what he does. So I think it's better to do one and done and make that one perfect. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is 1 year of the manga done, and it's been wild. It doesn't feel like a year's passed, which is good because of like how the year itself has gone. But also, like, in terms of the progress of this, it feels like only a couple months ago that I started doing this, and here we are at a year already. It already feels like it was a couple weeks ago that I did the last update video, so I was like, oh, do we even have anything to talk about? But yeah, that's been 1 year of One Piece a day. I'll continue it on, and I'll see you all in the next update video, which will probably be in another 50 chapters or so. Maybe when we finish the current arc, who knows? But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.